So if your practice is doing, 200, 250,000 a month, but you feel, I don't know, or unorganized, maybe scrambled when it comes to the daily operations of your practice, or maybe your office is, running on sticky notes, email chains to fix an issue without true accountability, or maybe you're relying on either yourself or that one person in the office, and you just keep asking yourself if you need to hire more or hire different. That may not be the problem. It may not be a people problem, right? At this stage in a practice, it may instead be a systems problem. So you could have highly, highly trained staff, but they're wasting hours doing manual entry. They could be re-explaining the same process every time you have a new front desk hire. Or you're sitting in meetings that really could have been a 5-minute video that you share by email to all of your staff members at once. So today we're going to walk through the exact tech stack and tools that we use here at NatRevMD to fix similar issues, right? Even though we're a medical billing company, we deal with the same types of issues that a medical practice has when it comes to hiring, when it comes to manual processes, when it comes to training and education of our staff. And so we're going to talk about some of the tools we've tried, some of the tools that we're still using to really solve some of these issues. And I do think some of these things are fun. I think if you guys have been listening to our podcast for a while, you know I love process. I like a spreadsheet. But more importantly, I like to try and figure out, okay, here's where we're at. Here's where we need to get to. How do we do that? And how do we leverage tools? But you do have to recognize that too many tools at once can be overwhelming to staff. And so we're going to talk through some of the top ones that we really enjoy and some of our goals for 2026 as our own company that will help your practice as well. So again, the key here is less reliance on a single person or wasting time on a manual or remedial task, and then using tools that can do a lot of different things. So we're going to talk about tools that can turn face sheets into coded, ready to submit claims. We're going to talk about tools that can build policies and trainings as you work, right? And then a hiring system that I'm really excited about. We recently tried this with a new hire that we are getting ready to start here in the new year. And it was amazing. I don't think I will ever hire without doing this ever again. So we're going to talk about those things today. So if you are tired of running a multi-million-dollar practice on what feels like duct tape and, sticky notes, then this episode is for you. So welcome to NatRevMD. You guys know this is our podcast really for leaders of high revenue private practices or physician owners, and even facilities who want their operations to basically match the clinical care that you're already providing to your patients. So at this level, right, your problem isn't necessarily that you need more people or effort. Typically, it means that you've got to think and take the time to look at the process that your people are doing and understand if it's the best way to do it moving forward. So right now you may have multiple people who do the same task different ways, or you may feel that onboarding takes months because everything lives in someone's head. You may have revenue cycle or billing workflows that still depend on manual data entry. And I get it, like our team does too. And so our goal for 2026 is really utilizing some of the tools more and better that we're going to talk about today. Some that we've been using this past year, some are new that we're just starting to kind of get into and basically be able to allow your team and your leaders who spend more time fixing processes to instead focus on driving growth in your practice, which may mean no more missed appointments, an appointment schedule that is full because they're calling patients. I mean, those sort of things are what drive revenue growth, right? You're going to get paid what you get paid for a 99213. But if you know that your appointment slots are full and you know that your patients are paying their balances, that's what's going to continue to impact revenue. So as you guys know, physician by background, we help now about over 30-ish practices that we help, and we have multiple different subspecialties. OBGYN and urgent care are some of our larger areas that we've helped support, but we help many different types of practices, and we've been growing, right? And so our internal systems are also something that we've been looking at, right? Because as you grow from one level to the next, and especially for practices that are having that same leap where you're growing which is amazing. Then you need to start thinking through, unlike a small shop, what systems can I put in place to help me continue to scale efficiently and also with the same level of quality and experience that your patients expect. So we have been ruthlessly testing tools, building different things into our process so that we can make sure that we're relying less on just one person and we are documenting what's going on. We're focusing on quality and then also just being able to decrease manual work efforts because it's annoying. I hate manual work. Obviously, in billing, there is still a lot of manual work, even with all the AI tools that are out there. Not all of them are as great as I would like to see them. There's still a lot of concern with some of the AI tools. So we're cautiously evaluating things, still relying on our team to evaluate information and processes, but excited about some of the tools we've been using. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a clear picture of some simple tested tech stacks that you can use to cut, manual billing processes, standardize some of your best processes in your office, or scale training without, adding more meetings to your calendar, and hopefully save you hours on hiring, which I'm most excited about. That one I'll be saving for last. Now, of course, this isn't to try and turn your office into an IT department or blowing up, expenses with all kinds of different tech tools. I think most of these are really inexpensive and very helpful to use. So again, if you're a large private practice or facility doing, over $150,000, $200,000 a month in net receipts, and your systems are held together by, shoestrings, then check out the link in the show notes to come and do a audit with us. We will do a medical billing revenue audit for those practices. You can head over also to our website at natrevmd.com. And upper right-hand corner is the link for a free revenue audit. All right, so let's start with the most basic part of your practice, which is going to be your claims. Now, so for many practices that also see patients in the hospital or do surgeries in a surgery center, you have face sheets, right? Face sheets that you're getting from the hospital or that you're getting from the surgery center, and someone is manually taking those, matching it up to your EMR system, trying to find the surgical notes, the clinical notes, and then putting them into your EMR. Someone is then coding those encounters, double checks against payer rules, and finally gets them out the door. Lots of manual work. Sometimes the insurance is right. Sometimes the insurance is not right. But it is, multiple, 10, 20 minutes on a per claim multiplied by thousands of encounters a month, which some of our larger hospital clients have, and you're going to get, potentially slower cash if they aren't getting out, or an FTE that's fully dedicated to this, which is in our case. You're going to get manual errors and denials, mainly just because you're, relying on a hospital face sheet for eligibility, and maybe someone's not reliably checking back into the EMR, or worse, wasting highly trained people stuck doing very low data entry work. So obviously this isn't a people problem, right? This is a process problem. So we are working with a third-party team to help us build out a process to automate this and try it out to make sure if it works. So conceptually, basically what it allows us to do is ingest the hospital face sheet. It will actually pull the patient records from the EMR. It will even do an AI-assisted coding, which are then reviewed by all of our certified coders, so that then those outputs are ready to go out the door. The system can even submit the claims or interface with the PM software to submit the claims. We're not there yet. I'm not comfortable enough with it, but it can hold the claims until one of our experts is able to review. So again, really cool idea that we're working with right now. We're basically in a trial phase. So again, instead of 10 to 20 minutes per claim of all of this fragmented manual work, we're going to be able to have a very consistent logic automated way to decrease the amount of work our human experts are having to do, so that they can instead focus on the complex denials or patterns in a payer's behavior, or really strategic improvements, which is what this is all about. So Obviously, when you deploy this kind of automation, you are really wanting to make sure it's accurate. And so that's the phase we're in right now. We'll keep you guys updated on how it goes. But our goal here is to just relieve some of that work that our really experienced coders are doing, and hopefully prevent any manual errors, and just like that manual spreadsheets to PDFs and that just ugly process that occurs when it comes to this. My goal is also that we have less burnout with our billing teams, and that our leadership time is back to thinking about, more complex billing issues. All right. So the next big drag is policies and procedures. And, when we started, we've always had policies and procedures, right? And your practice may have, SOPs or things that you have, but right, they're very wordy. They live in Word docs. Nobody really reads them. Maybe they're in binders. Maybe they're in a desk drawer. But the real process, it really is in the best people's heads, right? Which means every time they're out or you hire somebody new, does quality drop, right? And so this is a big thing for us to make sure never happens, because as you guys know, big believer on quality. And so you really have to have a simple way that truly the exact process that is being done is deployed and that is consistent. And so in a practice like yours, this may show up as inconsistent check-in process, eligibility workflows, different billers doing the same task, but in many different ways, or constant Teams messages and hallway questions, stealing the time from your A players who do it best. So instead, I want you guys to take a look at a couple different tools, and we'll talk about Loom as a tool. And again, I have no affiliation with any of these companies. I'm just sharing kind of things that work in our world. So Loom and ScribeHow are two companies I want you to check out. I have Loom for other personal reasons. I record a lot of educational content that I house for myself. So we have that anyway. You probably don't need Loom and like Microsoft Teams or Zoom. You may not need all of those different tools, but we'll talk about how we use both of those. ScribeHow is really, really cool, which helps you document how a process is used by recording the screen of you doing the process. And it actually takes screenshots of the process and turns it into an exact policy and procedure. So instead of trying to type through, first you go here and then you go there and you click this button and you file this document here, you actually record yourself doing the steps. And so things that are jumbled or unorganized, you can organize and actually show the exact process. Another tool I'm really liking is Manus, MANUS, which is helping us rewrite the things we do need written down in a more traditional fashion and makes it more sense and makes it more basic instead of like these really long-winded policies and procedures. And so we're using both of those, Loom, ScribeHow, and Manus, to help even some of our most basic tasks. And I'll talk about Loom here more in a second, but check out ScribeHow, especially for like doing eligibility. You could record somebody doing ScribeHow. It turns it into a policy and procedure. And then that way, if somebody has questions, they actually go see somebody actually doing it, and they don't have to rely on going and sitting with somebody again. It's just a very easy way to record exactly what's going on. It essentially captures each click and field, then spits it out a visual step-by-step guide. Loom I've really enjoyed for training, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, or documenting the conversation. We also use Teams, and Microsoft Teams is a big part of our company. We'll talk about that here in a second as well. And so again, some of this is duplicative, right? You don't need Teams and Zoom and Loom. I'm getting all the names, but again, we use Teams primarily. ScribeHow is a really cool one, and then Loom is another one. So you can basically use these tools to standardize everything. And so this can be a way for, instead of doing all of these trainings one-on-one with a staff member, you create this library of processes that are done by your experts. And then they are able to send those to a new employee. They watch them, and then they sit down and do a more targeted one-on-one. And so then they not only have them for referring back to, or if they rotate position. So if you have somebody who's in the front desk, maybe they room patients some days, you can have them watch those videos anytime that they have a question about having to do a specific task. So really, really recommend these. Again, I have no affiliation. It's just really great to have tools that can help make things easier. So want to make sure that, all of these things are helpful to make your team have faster onboarding, less variation when it comes to outcomes, and less like key person risks when someone leaves or goes on vacation. So really, really helpful. If you guys haven't already seen, we do have a sample eligibility guide for training your front desks. Check it out in the show notes below. All right. So let's now talk about Loom a little bit more specifically, or Teams, and how we use recording those. So we use both, don't likely need both, as I said. But if every change in your practice requires yet another live meeting, your calendar gets booked, right? Your team's booked, right? Especially if you're an office manager or you're running the office. And so this is another way to also record changes that are going on and do videos out asynchronously to share an update. So it can be a 5-minute video that you send out to everybody instead of doing a huddle or a meeting that really only has one topic on the agenda. Just depends how your office is run, but this is another really great thing that you can just record. You send async, and you're able to spread that information with a simple message. You guys know I've been in the corporate world where there's like meetings galore. I think meetings are important for live interaction when you need it. But I also think that we do too many meetings just in general in business. And so finding that sweet spot, I think, for your team is really important. So again, Loom and Teams, you can basically record something, right? And share that out, whether that's training or explanations, and rolling out a new payer rule, right? You could record a 5-minute Loom, walking through it, and then explaining a change in a workflow. Again, record it, save it for people. You could always still bring it up in a weekly huddle, but maybe you need something quick that goes out immediately. Or what we really like is onboarding a new manager to maybe a dashboard that you have. You could record a Loom and share that video with folks. So these are all different ways you can use things like Loom or Teams. Obviously, the result here is that you have a training system that scales with your growth instead of stealing more of your time or your manager's time. And so really, really important that you have these types of tools. And again, start slow, pick 1 or 2 things. We've not completely revolutionized everything in our company to these tools. We are building upon them as we go. All right. So I brought up how we use Microsoft Teams, which is also has kind of a SharePoint component to it. I'm a big believer of getting out of emails because I think there's fragmented communication. And so if your leadership conversations are spread across multiple emails or text or some random group chats, it just creates a lot of noise and also a loss of accountability. And so we're using both Teams. That's widespread. That's actually probably the tool we use the most across our team for standard files that we save, standard organization for every one of our practices. We've just implemented Monday for task tracking within Microsoft Teams because it integrates. And then we also, I think we've talked about before, an issue tracker where it comes down to the claim level saved in Teams. So then the practice has access, we have access. And so every claim that has an issue that we need a group response on, so a denial, a write-off, an eligibility issue, a coding issue, gets put there. So it's transparent for everybody, for our team, for the office's team. If we need something back from the office, they can put in the response. It holds everybody accountable, right? Our team, their team, so that we're all truly marching in the same direction. And we can even mark it off as completed and then filter out just the live ones that we still have issues on. And that's getting us out of email, like bouncing emails back and forth to say, hey, I've got a claim issue on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just doesn't work. And so our operation really runs on Microsoft Teams. We've just implemented Monday and are really liking it. We're doing it with a few of our key practices and teams. the key with all of this, right, is it does take time to get used to these tools, and consistency helps. And so for us, Teams is like mission control, right? It's channels by client, by department, initiative, et cetera. Meetings and chat are all in one place. We can record things easily. It allows us to put, payer contracts if the facilities have given us those, SOPs, training videos, payer policies, et cetera. It's just all in one place, and we can send a communication. So really do like that. I know many offices have different Microsoft Team like applications that you can use, but this is one that we really like. So if you are listening and thinking we have great people but terrible systems, that's usually the sign that you've outgrown this setup. And so, of course, if you're enjoying this episode, please leave us a review or share with another practice manager or leader or physician who may need help themselves. All right, so my last one, hiring, is a big area, right? So if you're a growing practice, you're going to be hiring. And for large practices, the hiring process is often painful. It is for us. And so you're doing HR screening, resumes, and maybe you are HR, maybe your manager is HR, but you're screening resumes. You or your leaders are then doing a bunch of those 15 to 30 minute maybe calls, right? Where you're like, oh, the resume looks good. It kind of checks the boxes. So you see, 100 plus applications, maybe you narrow it down, but you literally are, 15, 30 minute, interviews, 8, 10, 12 people. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is inefficient. And you may not even be finding the people that you like. Because maybe you're not wanting to interview everybody because it's just too much volume. So you lose hours of high leverage time on low probability candidates. And so my favorite new tool is Video Ask. Again, no affiliation. So essentially, and Video Ask can be used for a different thing, all kinds of things. We actually first were introduced to it because I was hiring somebody to help me with some technical stuff, and they sent a video ask to ask me questions about our company. It was awesome, and it's asynchronous. I can record back. In this case, for Video Ask, we recorded a small set of strategic questions for the role that we are hiring for. And it's me on camera, so you see me, and we are essentially asking them an interview question, and they have to record themselves. Now, they could choose to do an audio video too and no camera. And that was an interesting experiment. I guess next time I should probably tell people all that they should be on camera. Some did and some didn't. I found that the ones who did presented themselves well. And it almost was a test to see if they would show up on camera, which I think, in the role that we were applying for, which was client facing and an important kind of executive presence role, it was important for us to see on camera. And again, we were more likely to choose live interviews from those people who turned on their camera. So in this process, the candidates applied, right? We got a ton of resumes, we over 140, and they're getting those primary reviews. And instead of asking them to get on a, 15, 30 minute interview by Zoom, I just invited them to answer those questions on Video Ask. And you just send a link, and then on their own time, they can answer 4 or 5 questions. So instead of scheduling, a dozen 30-minute screenings, I can watch 5 or 6 of those Video Ask responses in 20 minutes. And it was actually really cool to see. Obviously, we have a pretty tech forward medical billing, I think, is tech forward just because you need to use technology. So it was interesting to see how some people struggled with that and others didn't. But it also was a good screening tool because I first asked people an initial question through Indeed and to see who responded. If they responded with, stuff that matched what we were looking for, then we sent them the Video Ask questions, and then they got to send in those answers. So then we can see how they communicate, if they understand the role or have the experience that we're looking for, if they felt like a culture fit. Again, that executive presence is really important because this role was client facing. So by the time we invited somebody to a live interview, they've already passed a much higher bar. And we've tried different things in the past. We've had them call hiring lines and or we've written like things down at the bottom of a job description to see if they read all the way through, little things like that. And they kind of worked, but nothing like this. This was incredible. So it recently turned 143 applications to 35 invites to Video Ask. I think we got like 10 or 12 videos on Video Ask, and I watched all of those personally. I sent my top ones to our director of operations, and then her and I both did 2 live interviews. So it took hiring from a time sink into this like filtered high signal process. So I'm protecting my calendar, my director of operations calendar. We're moving faster and increasing the odds that the people we actually wanted to meet with are worth the time. So huge fan of this. Highly recommend. So to summarize, if you are a practice or facility, kind of in that $150,000, $250,000 a month range, right? Then that's when, you're really thinking about processes. Not to say that if you're smaller than that, you shouldn't be. It's just, as you grow, processes become even more important. And so really important to not have manual or processes that live in people's heads, or that you have training that's ad hoc, that your hiring gets, eating into your calendar with, interviews that aren't worth your time. And so those frictions do compound into lost revenue and time over, as your company scales. So today we talked about a couple of different options that can help your team: an automation tool that automates face sheets into your EMR, and even some pre-coded claims. Using tools like ScribeHow to capture and standardize the best way to run key processes. Loom or Teams recording to train at scale, right? And get rid of those meetings that you don't need. Obviously, Teams and SharePoint to, help with collaboration and file organization. And then Video Ask was my favorite to screen talented individuals asynchronously, so to protect your leadership time. So obviously, when you get all of this right, you do improve revenue, right? You improve efficiency, you onboard faster, you just have less chaos, right? And your team can be focused on hiring better people, on working on growth and not just kind of fighting fires. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. And as always, if you are a private practice that is looking for a new medical billing company, we've taken over practices that had in-house teams or outsourced teams. And if you're interested, head on over to netrevmd.com and click in the top right corner, free revenue audit, and we will take a look at your billing metrics and just do an overall consultation with what's going on in your team and see if we're a right fit. All right. Have a great week.